Hello, my name's Euan Crumley, and welcome to the latest episode of the Athletics Weekly podcast. In each show, we bring you everything you need to know from the world of run, jump, and throw, analysing the biggest stories and speaking to key names from the sport. After a short summer break, we're back and ready to get our teeth into what is going to be the climax of this year's outdoor season, the World Championships in Tokyo. An array of national championships, also serving as the trials for Tokyo in many cases, have just come to a close, and there's much to pick through from those, with a few hints as to what might lie in store in Japan. The August issue of AW is out now too, and the focus of that is the past, given that this year represents 80 years since the first iteration of the magazine was published. This issue looks at 80 big moments and talking points from down the decades. So there's much to discuss, and to do all of that, I'm joined by AW Head of Digital, Jason Henderson. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Euan.
So we are recording this not long after the British champs have wound up. We were both in Birmingham to see them all play out at the Alexander Stadium, and there was certainly plenty going on there. The main headlines were that 5 championship records fell. The women's and men's 200 championship records fell. That was Dina Asher-Smith and Zarnell Hughes. And there were also championship records in the discus for Lawrence Okoye, Anna Purchase in the hammer, and Elise Thorner in the women's steeplechase. Jason, what were your general thoughts overall on the championships?
Firstly, well done on remembering all those, because I'm not sure I would have managed to remember them all off the top of my head. But it shows the rising standards, doesn't it? I mean, often you'll get doom mongers who say that the athletes weren't as good as the ones from yesteryear. But when you have championship records falling left, right, and centre, then it shows that the athletes are basically getting better the whole time. I think Lawrence Okoye's record as well was I think it was a 40-year-old championship record that he broke there. So, the championships were a very high standard. Weather wasn't fantastic either. It wasn't really that hot or warm enough for the sprinters. I don't think it wasn't ideal for them. It was a bit blustery as well, a little bit of a wind swirling around, and then it was a little bit damp as well on the second day of the championship, although it wasn't quite as the big thunderstorms that were predicted didn't quite come to fruition, but it was still a little bit damp. So, yeah, in conditions that weren't perfect, I thought the athletes did really well. And there's always that excitement factor as well, isn't there, when athletes are battling for places in the team for the major championships of the year. It always adds an element of jeopardy there. And yeah, it was a good enjoyable weekend we had. Sat next to each other with the best seats in the house, surveying the action in the grandly new rebuilt Alexander Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, there was, as you say, lots to be positive about. I think potentially the only drawback was because there are, so many different routes now to make your way onto a national team into the championships, whether that's world rankings, all sorts of ways to get in now. As much as there were events that there were the top 2, the criteria, obviously, part of that was you have to have the standard and you need to finish top 2 at the championships. But there are other ways to get in. So in some events, it was very obvious, and there was plenty of jeopardy that those top 2 places were absolutely crucial. Whereas in others, you knew there was maybe a bit of a margin for error. I guess it always, when the US Championships is happening at the same time, which is far more cutthroat because of the depth that they have to play with, it's an interesting comparison to make.
Yeah, no, definitely. It amuses me that the sport of modern athletics has been going for, I guess, well over a century, and yet I don't think national federations really quite know when the best time to pick a team is. So if you leave it until 2 or 3 weeks before the championships, then you pick people that are really in form, but at the same time, it doesn't give people much time to prepare if they know they're in the team. Whereas if you pick the team a lot sooner and earlier, it gives people longer to prepare, but then of course they might lose their form by the time the championships comes along. So, here we are about a month before the championships with national federations picking their team. But is it the right time to pick the team? Who knows? Nobody can ever really put their finger on it. And at the same time, qualification for championships as well. I mean, we were talking over the weekend about it being so complicated these days, certainly for British athletes. You know, we have world rankings, points, and finishing in the top 2 if you've got a standard, and there's World Athletics standards and UK Athletics consideration standards, and you know it's quite complicated for the average fan who just wants to sit there watching the action and wants to be able to easily understand who's qualified for the major events. So, you know, both of those things, I don't think the sport has particularly nailed it that well when it comes to, you know, sorting out the best way to do it. And maybe there isn't a best way to do it. Maybe there's just different ways to do it. And as we move through the history of the sport, things are done in different ways through different generations. Who knows? But one thing's for sure, there'll always be selection scandals. You can always guarantee. So I'm sure when the British team is named, there'll be some athletes who are up in arms and fans who are criticising it and so on and so forth. But that's happened since the dawn of time. So I don't think that will change.
Absolutely. A good place to start in terms of looking back at the championships would be the sprints. And on the men's side, Zarnell Hughes was a convincing winner of both the 100 and the 200. He looks like he's finding his form at just the right time.
Yeah, Zarnell ran really quickly. 9:94 in the 100, 19:90 in the 200. I mean, these are really quick times, and he just looked superb. He looked like he was really enjoying himself out there. Probably didn't really need to do the trials in order to qualify for the team. You know, he's that good. He's the British record holder. I'm sure he would have got picked anyway, but he said he wanted a run out. You know, he wanted to compete, and fair play to him for doing that. I thought Zarnell was one of the absolute stars of the championship, if not the star.
Yeah, and on the women's side, there were some very interesting developments in that. Obviously, Dina won the 200 championship record, but it was by fractions of a fraction from Amy Hunt, who was brilliant. Obviously won the 100, and then very close to winning the 200 as well. And you know, she was someone that sort of burst onto the scene back in sort of 2018, 2019 with her 200 meter exploits as a junior. And you know, she's had a few injury issues. She's completed her degree at Cambridge and things, but since moving out to Italy to work with Marco Airali, it's the fruits of the work that she's been doing with him there in Italy are starting to emerge. She's been starting to show a lot of consistency.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. I mean, as everybody knows, lots of the so-called teen prodigies, you know, often fizzle away and kind of fall by the wayside once they get into the senior ranks. But Amy's not doing that. You know, Amy's really solidifying a career now as a senior athlete. I mean, she had a great weekend in Birmingham. She's had a great season, full stop. I mean, we've seen so many teenage talents kind of burn away and fall away. I mean, even in her event alone, I remember when I started at Athletics Weekly, there was a sprinter called Sarah Wilhelmi, who was touted as the next big thing. Venetia James, another British 200-meter runner. These are all in Amy Hunt's event. Venetia James won a World Junior 200-meter title at the same championships where Usain Bolt broke through. And Bolt obviously went on to do what he did, but Venetia just fell away. You know, injuries and various issues got in the way. You know, there have been so many teenage talents who fall by the wayside, but Amy Hunt's managing to, you know, she's emerged from the other side. She's come through that junior period and that difficult transition into the senior ranks, and she's really mixing it with the best now. And as you suggest, Euan, we were the 100 metres that she won at the weekend. We were kind of denied a little bit of a clash with Daryl Nita there because Daryl false started. But we then got the clash that everybody wanted the following day in the 200s with Amy versus Dina Asher-Smith and Daryl in the race as well, and it was a great race which Dina just managed to win, but only just.
Yeah, well, another interesting development as well was that Dina, mentioned that she's moved back to London, that she's not working with Edric Floreal in Texas anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how much of an effect that has leading towards the championships.
Yeah, I think they always say a happy athlete is an athlete who's gonna perform well on the track and in the field. And I think Dina, I think she said at the weekend that she's a London girl. Really, she loves London. She loves being at home. So I'm sure she'll be happier now and will perform well. I mean, she was great at the weekend, so I'm sure she'll go on to have a really good rest of the season. Fingers crossed.
So Daryl Nita had a good run in the 200 as well, and it just all makes things look quite exciting. Whereas in terms of where the relay prospects as well, they've got quite a few athletes on form now.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Dina and the rest of the athletes were saying at the weekend that the relay prospects are just looking really good now. So yeah, Britain's going to have a really good, strong, certainly women's sprint relay at the World Championships in Tokyo, and I think most of the other relay squads as well will be pretty strong. They'll all be in the medal mix.
Yeah, and whenever there's a British Championships, the middle distances are always a big focus. And we had in the men's 800 Max Bergen back in action again. Our concern with him has always been that he shows flashes of brilliance and then his body lets him down or injury lets him down. But it feels slightly different this year, he said, hoping he hasn't just jinxed it.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, Max is another teenage prodigy who's trying to emerge into the other side, into the senior ranks unscathed. And again, he seems to be doing it now at last. I mean, let's not forget he reached the Olympic final last year. He had a good year last year, but so often in recent seasons we've seen him come out all guns blazing early in the summer, runs really fast, and then just gets injured straight away. World Championships, when was it? 3 years ago now. I think he ended up in a mobility scooter due to a kind of it was a deep vein thrombosis issue in his leg, which he'd picked up on the flight. I mean, he just has until now seemed to be a disaster zone when it comes to injuries and problems. And his latest one has been what's known as the sural nerve that goes down the calf and the Achilles area. And that's been causing him a lot of problems. But I had quite a long chat with him and his dad, who coaches him at the London Diamond League, and they're fairly confident that it's under control. It's not gone away entirely. He gets some problems from it, but he does manage it, and obviously running really well this summer. And he's had quite a few races now. Ran a big PB in London, and at the British Championships at the weekend ran just inside 1:44, narrowly missed the championship record. And it was a really impressive run in blustery conditions, although it was somewhat put in, made to look fairly ordinary later on that day when we had some certain results at the US Championships in Eugene, which I'm sure we'll come on to talk about in a moment, where a 16-year-old ran even quicker, much quicker, in fact. But yeah, we'll come on to that in the second year, and I'm sure.
Oh, we absolutely will. I mean, and just quickly going on to the women's 800 side of things, Georgia Hunter-Bell was another convincing winner, and she's got a dilemma or a decision to make in the next couple of weeks about whether or not to go for the 800, the 1500, or both. And she's an Olympic medalist in the longer distance. It's quite a measure of how quickly she's made progress since coming back to the sport. Barely 18 months ago, if that she's not only looking at being at another major championships, but that she has these big choices to make.
Yeah. What do you think she should do? That's the big question. 8 or 15?
I think she has. There's the way the 800 is shaping up at the moment. I think there's a very real opportunity for her there at the moment. That feels more open than the 1500. That's not to say that I don't think she has the chance of winning a medal in the 1500 as well. But the 800 feels like an opportunity for her.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if the timetable allows it, then why not do the double? I mean, I always think the double is a classic option, which we obviously saw people like Cohen Ovett do years ago, and Kelly Holmes and
Yeah.
others. Athletes don't seem to do it as much these days. I think it's partly because the timetable is not that double friendly. But yeah, if it's possible, then why not? Let's go for the double.
Yeah, she seemed quite confident that it would work out. So yeah, it's in for a penny and all that. Um, and when it comes to the 1500, we had one of the great stories of the UK Championships weekend. We saw Laura Muir sort of back in action, and she looked like she was about to take the title, and then out of the corner of her eye, Sarah Calvert appeared on the outside and just pipped her to it. That was a fantastic story.
Yeah, great race. I think there were quite a few really good races at the British Champs, but yeah, that was certainly the pick of the bunch, and a bit of a surprise as well. Really good breakthrough for Sarah. It was nice to see.
Yeah, and it was there was a heavy Scottish contingent, shall we say, battling it out for the prizes. How good is it to see Laura back? I mean, I know she only has a couple of races under her belt, but there were signs again in Birmingham, that the fitness is starting to come back after her injury problems this year.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe Laura's been a little bit overshadowed in the last year or so. Partly due to the rise of athletes like Georgia Hunter-Bell and Keely Hodgkinson, obviously over the 800. But Laura's the real deal. If she's in shape, she's a major championship medal contender for sure. And she's really experienced now as well. So I'm sure she'll know how to play these last few weeks in the run up to the World Championships to get herself in the best possible shape. And if she ends up being the top Brit at the World Championships in the 1500, then I wouldn't be surprised at all, because she's a class act.
Yeah, and in the men's race, it was slightly different in that there was no Jake Whiteman due to illness. George Mills wasn't running given his the problems with his wrist that he'd had. Josh Kerr had opted to run the 5,000 meters, given that as the world champion he already has the qualification into the world championship. So it was a slightly diluted field, shall we say, but there was a brilliant finish to it when Neil Gourley and Elliot Giles had a bit of a joust, when Elliot fully admitted that he stepped out into Neil's path. And I think, as we were talking about at the weekend, I think it was the first photograph I've ever seen where you can lip read exactly what one of the athletes thinks of it.
Yeah, I think Neil Gourley had a few words with Elliot Giles immediately after the race, but I think they seem to get on quite well generally. So I think it was handshakes and making up. Literally 5 minutes later. I don't think there's any bad blood there at all.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying over the weekend that the men's 1500 meters has kind of gone from being almost the blue ribbon events of the British Championships, because it's so stacked with quality and big names, into being as you say, a slightly diluted affair. Lots of the big name athletes not in it, but it was still a great race. And I mean, Elliot was a bit naughty to drift out like that, and he was it wasn't the right thing to do, but I think it's so easy to do. I mean, you can forgive him. I mean, when athletes are exhausted like that in the final 30, 40 meters of a race, and I think a little bit of kind of desperation kicks in, the tying up. I think almost your body kind of does things that you don't expect it to do. The body takes over the brain. And I think we see athletes do that at all levels, from grassroots right the way through to elite. The whole time, it's very easy to do. And luckily, nobody went over. If somebody had actually fallen, and actually Elliot would have been probably most likely to have fallen in those circumstances. That would have been a disaster, but it didn't happen. So yeah, it was a good race, and it made for an exciting finish to that race, and made for some great photos as well. I think the photos of that little incident with a few meters to go were quite dramatic.
Yeah, and what do you make of the 1500 meters generally this year? It's very different in that last year we were very used to the sort of soap opera between Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Josh Kerr and the war of words, and it's been much quieter. Obviously, Jakob's been injured. Josh has raced a bit. We've seen things like at the US trials, Jared Negus isn't even going to make it to the World Championships. It's a very different sort of feel to it this year.
Yeah, no, it does. Well, I guess things never stand still. So, you'll always have newer athletes who'll come through. And I mean, as Azadine Habs, the Frenchman, has been in really good shape this year, for example. There's others as well. And then I think maybe a bit of post-Olympic syndrome as well. There's always a little bit of a post-Olympic hangover, and athletes would probably do things this year that they wouldn't do in Olympic year. I'm not sure someone like Josh Kerr would have done lots of races in April, May at Grand Slam track meetings if it was an Olympic year. But because it's post-Olympics, he can try and experiment with a few things like that. So maybe it's just it's a non-Olympic year. Things change the whole time. It is different though. It feels quite strange not to have seen Jakob Ingebrigtsen on the circuit this summer. But I'm sure he'll be back during the tail end of the season, and I'm sure we'll see him firing on all cylinders in Tokyo. It'll just be really. I'm sure when they all line up for the 1500 meter final again in Tokyo, it will be a must-watch event. I mean, yes. Whoever's in it, there might be one or two of the bigger names like Jared Negus missing, but it will be an absolute must-watch event. And possibly one of the biggest talking points of the entire week. So, yeah, it's going to be slightly different, but still superb, I reckon.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we're expecting to see Jakob racing later this month, so we'll see what sort of shape he's in. And I guess the same with Keely Hodgkinson, who we haven't seen since the Olympic final. Her winning performance in the Olympic final, which incredibly is a year ago now.
Yeah. I mean, again, are these injuries to people like Ingebrigtsen and Keely Hodgkinson? Is that a little bit of post-Olympic syndrome or whatever the best word might be? I don't know. Or would these injuries just have happened anyway? It's hard to tell. But either way, we hear that Keely's back training now in good shape, building up towards these races in the second half of the season and then the World Championships in Tokyo. So it feels slightly odd not to have seen Keely race during the first half of the summer, but these things happen. Athletes get injured, don't they? So it's you're always going to have a few big names on the circuit missing at any one time.
Yeah, and as you alluded to earlier on, there was some interesting things going on at the US Championships. Probably the biggest headline, or one of the headline performances, was in the men's 800, and we had the 16-year-old Cooper Lutkenhaus, I hope I've pronounced that properly, when he came second to Donovan Brazier. And so he's now going to be the youngest ever US athlete to compete at a World Athletics Championships. That's quite a story.
An incredible story, yeah. I mean, we were still catching our breath from the UK champs on Sunday night and finishing our reports and stuff, and then the news dropped of Lutkenhaus's, 142.27 at the age of 16. Yeah. He's like 16 and a half years old. I mean, I'm so unfamiliar with him. I found myself, if I was writing about him over the subsequent hours, I was having to look up his name again just to check I'd spelt it right, because I just wasn't familiar with his name. As an athletics writer, I can write things like Big Gosh or Adam Cashot off the top of my head without having to look them up. But I had to look up this young lad's name because I'm just so unfamiliar with him. But yeah, he's going to be a name that everybody is going to know now going into the second half of the season, and it'll be fascinating to see how he carries himself at the World Championships in Tokyo. I'm not sure whether anyone's even asked him this question yet, but I wonder whether he's even ever been outside the USA yet. I mean, lots of Americans they're not famed for their traveling outside of America. I mean, he may have been, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe his first international trip. Certainly from a racing point of view, I can't see that he's done any races outside of America. Every race has been in the US. So yeah, it's going to be a real adventure for him, and everybody's going to be glued to his 800-meter heat in Tokyo in a few weeks' time. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, the 800 is going to be definitely going to be another must watch, and Donovan Brazier coming back to form as another great story in itself. He was obviously the world champion in 2019, and then had all manner of injury problems that stopped him in his tracks. So to see him back as well and adding to this mix of incredible 800-meter runners is great to see.
Yeah, one of my old friends in the sport, a physical therapist called Jared Hartman, who lots of listeners will be familiar with because he treated Paula Radcliffe. He got Kelly Holmes onto her first Olympic podium in Sydney in the 800 meters. She won a bronze there after she'd had Achilles problems. He managed to use his healing hands to get her in good physical shape to actually get on the podium. And I believe he was helping to treat Donovan Brazier in the past 2 or 3 years as well, during his rehab from surgery. So I think in the background there have probably been quite a few people who have helped Brazier get back on track, and one of them is Gerard Hartman, who's one of the best therapists in the business, if not the best therapist. I'm sure Brazier will sit down at some stage with somebody, hopefully AW, and he'll recount the whole story of the comeback, because he's been out for a long time, and come back to run not just as not almost as good as before, but better than before. He's run quicker than before. So it's really, really impressive. And again, it'll be fascinating to see how he gets on in Tokyo, because he was a world champion 6 years ago now. So can he retain a world title 6 years later after spending much of that time on the sidelines with injury? It'll be really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, and the sprinting side of things in the US is never dull. And we saw Noah Lyles and Kenny Bednarek. If Neil Gourley and Elliot Giles were having a bit of a joust in the 1500, then this pales in comparison compared to Bednarek and Lyles, who were sort of doing the old stare down and the shoving and having a bit of a war of words afterwards. It just builds everything up really, really nicely for when it comes to the championship events.
Yeah, I mean, as a Brit watching these results from abroad, I noticed something that said that it made the ESPN Sports News Roundup or something, with the implication that the athletics doesn't often get into those kind of roundups, but the Noah Lyles, Kenny Bednarek, kind of stare off, managed to get their attention and made that news. So it's interesting how media organisations get attracted to these kind of things. I have to say, it reminded me a little bit as well of Lance Armstrong's famous, it was described as the look, where he was just about to sprint away from Jan Ullrich in the Tour de France years ago, and he just glanced over his shoulder and gave Ullrich a stare for 2 or 3 seconds before then just taking off up the mountain. I think Armstrong has since denied it and said that it's just the way the cameras caught it and the way that the commentators talked about it at the time. And apparently he reckons he was just looking around to see where his teammates were. So he's kind of played it down in very recent years. But it is an iconic moment from the world of cycling. And Noah Lyles' look or stare was quite reminiscent of that.
Yeah. And on the women's side, Melissa Jefferson Wooden looks, she's in incredible shape. And then on the other side, we've got, Sha'Carri Richardson, who, it's never dull when she's around. she's around as well. She was arrested for allegedly assaulting her boyfriend, Christian Coleman. So, I mean, there are so many subplots and stories going around with these sprint races. There's certainly plenty to keep everyone interested in what's going on.
For sure. There's never a dull moment in athletics, that's for sure. Yeah, I think we all saw the Sha'Carri Richardson story and we were just rolling our eyes. But amazed, but at the same time not surprised. it's, controversy seems to follow her around a little bit. And, at least she'll be at the World Championships as well, though. She has a bye to the championships. So she pulled out of the US trials, but she'll be at the World Championships. So we'll see what happens with her there. She's not been in great shape this summer so far. She hadn't run that well. But there's still a few weeks to go before the World Championships. So there's enough time for her to turn her form around.
The AW Track and Field Legends series is available now at athleticsweekly.com. In these exclusive interviews, Olympian and broadcaster Tim Hutchings speaks to figures who have shaped the sport. In the latest episode with Steve Cram, it's out now, plus you can also hear from Colin Jackson, Brendan Foster, Peter Elliott and Sally Gunnell. These all form part of the New Look Athletics Weekly subscription. To find out more, visit athleticsweekly.com. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the new issue of AW is out now, and we're having a good old-fashioned wallow in nostalgia with this issue. We've gone decade by decade to look at some of the biggest, best, most memorable and most controversial moments during AW's lifetime since it first began in 1945. Putting it together was very much like stepping back in time, and so much has changed and evolved in that time. There will almost certainly be something you disagree with about our list or think we've missed. So let us know what your top moment would be via our social media channels or email haveyoursay@athleticsweekly.com. Jason, you've got a long history with this magazine. Are there any moments during your time with AW that stand out to you, whether that's someone you've interviewed, an event you've seen, or something that meant the most to you?
I think for me, it's always Roger Bannister and the sub 4 minute mile. I mean, his performance always, or very often, comes out top in polls that have been done like this over the years. So it's hard to dislodge him from the number one spot, in my mind at least. But everybody has their own opinions on these things. Everybody has different views. I kind of grew up during the Cohen-Ovet era as well. So for me, Cohen-Ovet's clashes in Moscow in 1980 in particular were iconic. But everybody, top moments mean different things to different people. It would very much depend on what your event is. So we've got listeners who are jumpers and throwers and sprinters and hurdlers, and they would be probably likely to pick top moments from those events. Some people might have a top moments which might be their training partner winning setting a course record in a local 10K race up the road, or maybe they don't compete, but they stood as a spectator at the London Marathon roadside, or maybe went to the London 2012 Olympics during one of the big sessions and spectated there, and that would be their top moment. I mean, everybody has their own particular special moments, and I think that's why this issue will be really popular, because we're pulling in 80 years worth of athletics moments from not just in Britain but around the world, and it's just the kind of thing that provokes debate, doesn't it? And I wouldn't be surprised if we get mildly inundated with lots of replies, especially on social media, with people giving their view. Yeah,
we definitely want to hear from anyone who has thoughts about it. I mean, as you say, Jason, it's a very personal thing, and I think part of what the issue is trying to do is just to make the readers think about those moments of the past, and to think about the sport and what it means to them, and the athletes that mean the most to them as well. I mean, it's hard to see past, as you say, sort of Roger Bannister, but in terms of sort of moments that stick out in my mind as well, I'll never forget many years ago turning on the TV early on a Saturday morning and hearing the news about Ben Johnson being disqualified from the women's from the men's 100 after that incredible race. I remember that race and just being absolutely blown away by how fast it had been run and how incredible it looked. And then you find out the following day what exactly had happened. It's that was a story that hit the headlines for the wrong reasons, but stands out as a sort of a key moment in time, I think. And in terms of something that I've I've been at and seen and witnessed. It's Jake Whiteman at the World Championships in 2022, winning whilst his dad Jeff was commentating in the stands. I think that's a moment that's going to live with me for a while. But there's so much. I think that's part of athletics' charm, is that there is such a depth of history to it as well, and looking back through it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and certainly, anyone who's got an interest in all these classic moments, they should go out and buy this issue if they don't subscribe already, because it's just packed full of great photos and good summaries of the various moments, and there's other stuff in the magazine. We've got a lot of the regular columns as well, but the thrust of the issue is these 80 moments, and it's a great commemorative issue. And we've obviously moved a few years ago now from a weekly magazine to a monthly, but the monthly magazine is just a lot chunkier and glossier, and any fan worth their salt should have a copy of this issue. Really, it's really a great read.
Yeah, and it's also a reminder that you can look back through the past 80 years of the sport thanks to the AW Digital Archive, which features every issue of the magazine going back to 1945, and you can find out more about how to access that at athleticsweekly.com. So that's it for this episode. Thank you, Jason, for joining me, and we'll be back next month for more from the Athletics Weekly podcast as we get ready for those World Championships in Tokyo. We're in the midst of putting the World Champs preview issue together as we speak, so keep a lookout for that one too. And in the meantime, don't forget that the August issue of AW is out now, available via athleticsweekly.com and selected retailers. Please also like and subscribe to the AW podcast on your usual podcast platform. See you next time.